Was one kiss at a Christmas party really enough to tear apart a marriage, or did Marcus simply overreact to something every working woman deals with? How could I have known that laughing it off in front of my whole team would cost me the job, the house, and every room I thought I owned? I thought I was just having fun. But I did not understand that the people watching me laugh had very good memories. My name is Vashti Rane. I am 31 years old, a marketing coordinator at Helix Solutions, and for 4 seconds at the Grand Meridian Hotel Christmas party, I leaned toward my manager while my husband stood at the entrance with flowers our daughter helped him choose. He saw everything. He made no sound. He placed the flowers on the nearest table, looked at me once across the room, and walked to the service corridor to wait. That was the night I laughed in front of 20 colleagues and used the word insecure. He wrote it down. This did not begin at the party. It began on a Thursday evening in late November on the rooftop terrace of the Helix Solutions building, when Derek poured a second glass of Malbec from the bottle he keeps in his desk drawer and the city went amber below us, and I told myself I was simply enjoying a good working relationship. Derek is my marketing director and my direct manager, and 41 floors above the daily routine, he becomes easier to be around than almost anyone I know. He listens without rehearsing his answer while you are still talking, and my husband Marcus is methodical and careful and writes things in a spiral notebook, and I had spent 2 years finding that quality quiet in a way I had no clean language for. Derek had language for everything. I scratched my key fob against the railing bracket when I stood to leave. I did not notice. I was in the middle of a sentence about the client's terrible logo, and Derek was laughing in the unhurried way that makes a person feel genuinely clever rather than merely entertaining. Marcus was in the kitchen when I arrived home. He said I smelled different. Not a complaint, just the way someone notes a shift in temperature. And I said a colleague brought wine, completely normal, nothing to report. He looked at me for 1 beat longer than a person looks at something they fully believe. Lily asked that same weekend why Daddy always watched the door when Mummy came home. I told her he was excited to see me. She said he did not look excited. He looked like he was checking something, and she went back to her drawing without waiting for a response. Marcus did not look up from his plate, but he went very still for a long moment, the stillness of someone who has received information they were already preparing for. And that stillness would come to mean more than I understood at the time. That Sunday, Priya sent him a screenshot from a colleague's Instagram story. The rooftop terrace, the amber hour, the back of a jacket she recognized from a family dinner the previous spring. Marcus turned his phone face down on his thigh and opened the spiral notebook. The restaurant charge appeared on our joint account that Tuesday. Birchwood and Grill, Thursday, 8:47 p.m. Enough for 2 people and a good bottle of wine. I paid without thinking, like someone who had already decided nothing was wrong. Marcus placed the phone between us on the counter and tapped once. He asked calm, precise questions about the time, the location, and why it didn't match my late team debrief entry. Then he asked if the person with me was the same one from the rooftop photo Priya sent. Not accusing, just connecting shapes that no longer fit. I told him he was turning our kitchen into a courtroom, called him jealous, and watched him store the word. He said noted, and left. I called Kezia, who helped me rebuild a cleaner version of events, one that sounded solid enough to believe. 2 days later, Marcus tried again, asking to meet the colleague casually. I refused, framing it as control. He said he would ask once more, then act. I dismissed it. At the office, Tamsin avoided my eyes. Derek sent the party invite, employees only. I didn't question it. Marcus wished me a good time without looking up. Something had already shifted, and I chose not to see it. The Grand Meridian Banquet Hall does Christmas, the way hotel event teams have always done it and always will. Pine garlands along every window rail, LED fairy lights strung at 3 heights above the tables, a DJ tuned to the precise volume that makes every conversation require leaning in close. The lean creates intimacy that feels personal, but is really just physics. The bar was open when Tamsin and I arrived at 7:20. The appetizers were good. Derek was already there in a navy jacket, and when he saw me from across the room, he raised his glass slowly, as if the gesture was something he had considered. I raised mine back and felt the particular pleasure of being the person in a room who is expected and recognized. Marcus knew the Helix Solutions building well. His firm shared a planning department on the 3rd floor, and he had walked through the Grand Meridian lobby before, contributed to a structural review of the venue 2 years prior. He did not call ahead. He bought flowers from the Winter Market stall 3 streets from our house, the ones Lily always wants to stop at when they pass it on Saturday mornings, and he came to surprise me. By 9 o'clock, the photo booth alcove near the left wall was running. Red velvet curtain, a props basket, the strip printer humming. Several of us went in together, me, Derek, 2 junior designers, the head of the social media team. It was loud and a little silly, and the kind of thing that belongs at every office Christmas party. The strip printed 4 frames. In the 3rd frame, Derek's arm was around my shoulders, both of us mid-laugh. In the 4th frame, the arm was lower, and the composition of that image was not something you could describe as ambiguous to anyone who looked at it directly. I kept the strip and put it in my clutch bag without deliberating, the way you keep a receipt from a good evening. By 9:45, I had finished 4 champagne glasses, and Derek and I were standing near the photo booth alcove again, slightly apart from the main group. The velvet curtain was behind us. The room had reached the temperature that closed rooms with open bars always reach, not just warm but pressurized in a particular way, a way that makes the walls feel farther away than they are and makes the distance between 2 people feel like a decision rather than an accident. He leaned toward me, unhurried, not sudden, the kind of movement that happens between 2 people who have been choosing not to name something for weeks and have decided, at 9:45 on a warm December evening, to stop choosing. I leaned back. His hand was at my waist for the length of 1 full breath. 4 seconds. I stepped back first, though I would not remember it that way the following morning, and the version I would tell myself by the end of the following week would not include the leaning at all. Then I heard his voice from across the room. Not words, just the specific frequency of Marcus's voice, the sound that reaches me before I locate its source, the way a key finds its lock before you have consciously inserted it. He was standing at the banquet hall entrance in his dark coat, holding the brown paper flowers. He was looking at me across the room, not at Derek, at me. His expression was the expression of a man who has just confirmed something he had spent 6 weeks hoping was wrong. Derek moved toward the bar in a single smooth, unhurried step. The practiced exit of someone who has identified the door long before the room required him to use it. What I did next is the part I cannot narrate from a comfortable distance. I laughed. Not briefly, not softly. A laugh that started in my chest and arrived full and clear before I had consciously decided to produce it. A crowd-turning laugh, the kind that rotates heads at multiple tables because the room recognizes it as a performance and performs back. I said, at a volume the nearest 4 tables could hear clearly, that my husband genuinely could not stop himself from checking up on me, even at a company Christmas party. I used the fond exasperation register, the lovable and slightly exhausting habit tone, the voice that invites a room to share in a mild private joke. Petra, a junior colleague who had laughed at my jokes all evening, made a sympathetic sound and offered a small commiserating smile in my direction. Tamsin made no sound at all. She looked at the table in front of her, not at me, not at Marcus, specifically at the table, and she did not look up for a long time. Marcus walked toward me. He did not hurry, did not look toward the bar where Derek had disappeared, did not scan the room for an audience. He placed the brown paper flowers on the nearest table and stepped close enough that only I could hear him, and said simply that Lily had helped him choose them and wanted me to have them tonight. Then he looked at me, not with anger, not with hurt performed for the room, but with the specific level look of a man who has finished reading a situation completely. and said he would be in the service corridor. I told him to go home. I said he was embarrassing himself in front of my entire professional team. I said the word insecure, the same word from the kitchen counter, the same word from the living room before that. And this time, it landed in a room with 20 witnesses who heard it clearly. Petra's sympathetic expression held for a moment, then shifted into something slightly uncertain, as if she had agreed to something and was now reading the small print. Tamsin kept looking at the table. The service corridor was cold and narrow with fluorescent overhead light, and the bass from the party filtering through the heavy door as vibration rather than sound. Something felt in the sternum rather than heard with the ears. Marcus was standing with his back to the wall, coat on, hands in his pockets. He had not retrieved the flowers. He said he needed to understand what he saw, and he said it the way an engineer identifies a structural problem, not as outrage, as necessity. He said he observed the photo booth alcove from the entrance, the position of the curtain, and the position of two people stepping out from behind it. He asked whether the strip the printer produced was still in the room or on her person, because if the strip was printed, it existed regardless of who was currently holding it, and he wanted to understand what it showed before someone else described it to him. The trap was direct. He asked which of the three things she was prepared to describe right now as appropriate behavior: what happened at the alcove, how she introduced his arrival to the group, or the specific word she chose in front of 20 colleagues. He asked it as a request for information, not a provocation. I said he was making a scene in a hotel hallway. I said nothing happened. He stayed very still. Then he said one more thing, quietly, as a genuine question: whether the way she framed his arrival to the room was how she genuinely experienced his place in her life, or whether it was what she needed 20 people to believe that night. He offered one practical option: talk at home in the morning, coffee ready, when she was not drinking and he was not standing in a corridor. And he said it as though he still believed, at that point, she might take him up on it. I told him to stop performing. He nodded once, said nothing further, and left through the service door. The bass from the party came through the door. I stood under the fluorescent light for 10 seconds and went back to the dance floor. A junior Helix designer had posted an Instagram story, a sweeping clip of the room, that caught at the 3.4-second mark two things simultaneously: Marcus at the banquet hall entrance holding the brown paper flowers, and me laughing. Priya was still awake across the city. She stopped the clip on that frame, saved the screenshot, and waited. Marcus was not in bed when I woke. His pillow was straightened before he left, which is not his habit. The mug was in the drying rack. Kezia had sent a message at 1:14 a.m. saying glad I stayed. It would blow over. Derek's message came at 11:57 p.m. Good party, and nothing after it. I stared at it for several seconds and closed the thread without responding, and the closing felt like something I was deliberately not examining. Marcus collected Lily from Diane's at 9 and did not return to the house first. I called at noon when Lily's coat was still absent. He answered on the third ring, said he was at his mother's and would have Lily back by 4, and sounded organised in a way that offered no conversational purchase. Organised and not angry is a register I had no practice arguing against. Priya told me later, with the careful, specific tone of someone sharing information they know is being filed, what happened at Diane's kitchen table that morning. Marcus arrived and gave his mother the factual version: what he saw at the party, what was said in the corridor, which word Vashti used in front of the group, and how many times she had used it across the previous month. He showed Diane the still frame from the Instagram story, his face, the flowers, Vashti's expression across the room. Diane said nothing for a long time. Then she said the thing she apparently says to each of her children when something real has occurred. The fact that it happened is not the worst part. The worst part is whether the person involved admits it. She made Lily a grilled cheese sandwich and put on a cartoon. And Marcus sat at the table and wrote in the notebook while Lily ate and watched and asked Grandma Diane whether grilled cheese was Daddy's favourite, and Diane said it was not, but she made it for him anyway. He brought Lily back at 4:07. He pulled up to the driveway, handed me the purple overnight bag, said he would be back at 7 for dinner, and drove away without coming inside. He said it the way an arrangement is stated rather than agreed upon. Lily watched the car reverse out and asked whether Daddy was living in his car. I said no. She said he had his big bag in the back seat. I said he was doing laundry at Grandma Diane's. She looked at the street and said his face at the party was the face he wore when he thought the neighbour's dog was going to die. A dog that died 2 summers ago, a face Marcus carried for 3 days afterward. A detail preserved in Lily's memory with the accuracy of someone who does not know yet that some things are supposed to be forgotten. I took her inside. I did not respond to this. The school gate on Monday morning was the first time I understood the party had left the building. I arrived at 8:25 with Lily's bag. Marcus was already there, standing slightly apart from the other parents, which is his usual habit. But Caro, the mother of Lily's closest friend, a woman I see 3 mornings a week, who attended the Helix Solutions summer party the previous year when partners were included and knows Derek by sight from the company's public social media, was standing near Marcus and saying something quietly to him before she saw me approach. When she saw me, her expression performed a reset that took half a second too long to complete. She said good morning. She turned to her phone. Half a second is not a long time, but a half-second reset, on the face of someone you have stood next to at a school gate 3 mornings a week for 2 years, carries a very complete message. The social exposure was no longer contained to a hotel banquet hall or a parent network rumour. It was standing in the cold at 8:25 a.m. on a face I knew well, unable to fully disguise itself. Marcus did not look at me during the handoff. He touched Lily's hair once, said he would be at 7, and walked back to his car without checking whether I was watching. From the spare bedroom that evening, I called Kezia while Lily watched television. I gave her the version I needed her to carry. Marcus arrived uninvited at a ticketed work event, humiliated me professionally in front of my team, made a scene in a hotel corridor, and was now involving his mother, his sister, and apparently the school gate in what was fundamentally a private marital difficulty. I used the word controlling 4 times. I said the party was normal, and Marcus was expanding it into something it was not. Kezia listened. Then she asked the question she had not asked before. She wanted to know whether there was anything on my phone that would look wrong if Marcus saw it. I said no, and I meant it in the way a person means something when they have arranged their beliefs carefully around not examining it. And then I did the thing that cannot be taken back. I wanted to show Kezia there was nothing in the Derek thread, only professional correspondence, campaign references, evidence that my version of events was the accurate one. To do this, I had to scroll past other messages to reach the October campaign exchange. My hand was not steady. The room was warm and I had been talking for 20 minutes with the particular energy of someone building a case, and I sent the frame below the one I intended. Not the campaign reference, but a message from Derek that mentioned the rooftop by name and used the kind of language that colleagues do not use about shared views of a city. Not graphic, not explicit, but specific in a way that belongs to a private experience rather than a professional one. And that intimacy was precisely what made it worse. Kezia saw the read tick appear. She sent back a single thumbs up. Not, that's fine. Not, I see what you mean. A thumbs up, which in 12 years of friendship means she has received something and noted it, and will not comment on it, and that silence is itself a form of commentary. I deleted 3 messages from the Derek thread that same night, not knowing that metadata stays, that the original thread exists intact on a device I cannot access, and that the screenshot is already saved and 3 weeks old. At the office on Monday, the photo booth strip was pinned to Tamsin's board. Frame 3 visible. Frame 4 visible if you looked directly. It was not displayed prominently. It was not hidden. It simply existed in a place that any person who passed her desk could see, which included me every morning, which included Derek when he walked through the open-plan floor, which included Gerald Okafor on his Tuesday walkthrough. Petra, the junior colleague who made the sympathetic sound and smiled at my joke the night of the party, passed me at the kitchen kettle on Tuesday morning without speaking. Not with cruelty, not with drama. She filled her cup, said good morning back when I said it, and left. That was all. 2 words, and a turned back. It was the most efficient communication I received that week. Marcus arrived at 7 as promised, made pasta, ate with Lily. After Lily was in bed, he sat at the kitchen table, not the sofa, the table, which is a different register, and said he had checked the Grand Meridian's venue formats and found that cocktail-style receptions of that capacity do not typically restrict partners by headcount in December, and he wanted to see the original party email from Derek about the format. Not any other correspondence, just that one email, so he could understand whether no partners came from a company-wide policy or from a single source. I said work correspondence was private. He said a party format announcement is not a confidential document. I used controlling and jealous and insecure in rapid sequence and said this was precisely the behavior that had created distance between them. He listened to all of it. When I finished, he said he had asked this 3 times, would not ask again, and that his next steps would not require an answer from her. I told myself it was a bluff. He left the table and did not return to argue. 2 days later, he made no accusations. He said only that Lily should not carry tension at school pickup, and could they agree to be warm at handoffs for her sake. He also mentioned, as a separate practical matter, that he had separated his personal expenses from the joint account, that the joint account would remain for household bills only, and that this was not punitive. He had already done it. He said next steps the way a person says it when they are standing on a step they identified weeks ago. The family group thread that evening received a message from Priya, meant for me alone, arriving instead in front of Diane and Marcus and anyone else in the thread. It said she was not going to pretend the Instagram story was nothing, and she hoped things could be sorted. Diane's red receipt appeared in 4 minutes. Marcus's in 6. I typed 4 replies and deleted everyone. Marcus's phone on the counter while he refilled Lily's bedtime water showed a calendar notification. City Hall, 9:15 a.m., the following Thursday. I saw it for 2 seconds before the screen dimmed. I assumed a work planning meeting. I assumed incorrectly. By the 2nd week of January, Marcus was sleeping in the spare bedroom. He moved his pillow and the long navy charger cable on a Monday, citing a cold he did not want to pass to me. The cold lasted 1 day. The pillow stayed, and the charger cable sat coiled neatly on the spare room desk beside a face-down stack of papers that were not work. The car parked facing the street every evening. He charged it every night rather than once a week. These were small adjustments, each individually explainable, collectively legible in only one direction. On Thursday evening, I walked into the spare bedroom while he was folding a shirt. I sat in the desk chair and used my presentation voice, the one that signals I am managing the room even when the floor is uncertain, and said I had been thinking, and I understood he was upset about the party, and I wanted to address things properly. I used his word deliberately. Properly. I said I wanted to find where we had gotten off track and return to it. I had rehearsed the sentences until they did not sound rehearsed. Marcus folded the shirt, placed it on the bed, and looked at me with an expression that was neither warm nor cold but calibrated. The expression of an instrument rather than a person, precise and without agenda. He asked quietly whether address things properly meant the party specifically, or everything since October, the restaurant charge, the rooftop photograph, the party email format, the service corridor conversation, the question he had asked 3 times that never received an answer. He asked whether properly meant a complete, honest account of everything, or a managed account of the parts I had chosen to name. The offer collapsed before it finished landing. Not because he was unkind, because he was specific, and what I was providing was fog, and fog does not hold when someone pushes a specific question into it. I stood and told him he was turning my attempt to communicate into an interrogation. I said I came into this room to connect, and he was treating it as a procedure. I left. He watched me go and said nothing. He did not call after me, did not follow, did not try to continue the conversation through the closed door. The silence behind me was the silence of someone who has reached a conclusion and is no longer interviewing for a different one. I found out about the parking garage conversation months later, when Tamsin had no reason to protect anyone from it. Marcus came to the Helix Solutions building on a Friday afternoon with a document for the planning department on the 3rd floor. A routine delivery, the kind of errand his firm made every few weeks, given the shared departmental relationship. Tamsin was at the level B2 pay station when he came through. A small pine air freshener was clipped to the edge of the payment screen. He asked her one question: whether the Christmas party email sent company-wide included a partner RSVP option, or whether the capacity restriction was communicated differently to different staff members. Tamsin answered without hesitation. She said the company-wide communication included a partner RSVP option with a separate note. She said the no partners instruction Vashti received must have originated from a different source. She said it plainly, the way a person says something they have been ready to say for some time, and are relieved to finally say clearly. Marcus thanked her and went upstairs to complete the delivery. He noted the date, the time, and the pine air freshener in his notebook. This is how engineers work. You document the load points, you note what holds and what gives. On Sunday afternoon, the streaming service sent me a login prompt and showed a subscription paused message. The joint card had been removed from the account. Marcus's personal card was now listed as primary. I was not listed as a secondary user. One piece of shared infrastructure, reorganized quietly, without announcement. I opened my own account and paid separately and did not raise it with him. But the notification sat in my head the way a specific sound sits in an empty room, located precisely, impossible to unhear. Sunday evening, Lily at Diane's for the weekend. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with the spiral notebook closed in front of him. A pen rested beside it. I noticed for the first time that the clip on the pen was slightly bent, a small deformation in something he had carried for years, the kind of detail visible only to someone who is finally looking. He did not open the notebook. He said he wanted to offer one final honest conversation before he made decisions he could not reverse. The word reverse arrived with the weight of a technical term, precise, load-bearing, not chosen for drama. He said he had asked questions, made requests, and offered multiple specific peace options across weeks, and the consistent pattern of her response had been deflection, reversal, or performed outrage. Then he asked one direct question. Was there anything she wanted to tell him right now, with no one else present, that was completely accurate, not managed, not shaped, about what happened between October and December? The trap was clean and calm. He asked whether on December the 3rd I was at Birchwood and Grill with Derek alone, whether the conversation that evening was professional, and whether the bill covered 2 people or more. He said the answer would affect what he did next, and he said it without theatrics, the way a person states a variable they intend to account for. I told him I would not be questioned at my own kitchen table. I said what he did next sounded like a threat. I said if he wanted honesty, then honesty ran in both directions, and arriving uninvited at a colleague's event was itself a statement about trust and control. I flipped it, the way I always flip it. The difference now was that the flipping no longer felt like a tactic. It felt like the accurate reading of the situation. That certainty, that settled conviction that I was the wronged party in my own story, was the most expensive thing I owned at that point. He did not argue with the flip. He said once that he had brought flowers and stood at the door, and the way she described his arrival to the room was a choice she made rather than a response to his behavior. He said if the positions were reversed and she had appeared to surprise him at his own firm's event, he would have smiled and put a drink in her hand. He said it as a statement. Then he said he had an appointment on Monday and another on Thursday, and after those 2 appointments he would be ready to handle things properly. His word, his meaning, filled with 6 weeks of specific, sequential, documented work. He said he still hoped she would call before Thursday evening, that he would rearrange if she asked for an honest conversation, a counsellor present if she preferred. He waited. I told him to do what he thought was best. I meant it dismissively. He nodded, went to the spare bedroom, and the door closed with a sound that was not a slam and not soft. A quiet final click that had nothing to argue back at. By Thursday, he spoke to me only about logistics, Lily's schedule, the gas bill, the upcoming car service. He gave Lily her full bedtime, reading, water, the specific sequence of lights she likes, and the spare room door closed again with the same quiet finality. I checked his phone from habit. The calendar showed City Hall, 9:15 a.m., and in the notes field below, bring binder. 2 words. I looked at the closed door for several seconds and did not open it. Making lunches the next morning, the joint account app pushed a notification to my phone. Account access updated, new primary contact set. I stared at it. I went to work. The Helix Solutions lobby in January is colder without the decorations. The pine garlands are gone. The diffuser shelf in the HR corridor holds only the cord that powered it. The pale stone floor runs from the glass entrance to the security desk in an uninterrupted line, and at 9:18 on a Tuesday morning, it felt longer than usual. I swiped in with my laptop bag and a coffee. 2 junior colleagues came through behind me. Tamsin was at the reception desk collecting a courier package. Elena, 4 years at that desk, the practiced expression of someone following a procedure they did not design and are grateful for the structure of, looked up and said that someone had left an envelope for me that morning, had asked it be handed to me personally, had said it was time-sensitive. Cream-coloured envelope. My full legal name on the outside, printed, not handwritten. I had never seen my own name look so official on something handed to me in my own building. I opened it at the desk. A formal divorce petition. Irreconcilable differences, temporary financial orders, joint credit lines frozen, separate household structures effective within 14 days, hearing scheduled the following month. I stood at the lobby desk and read it with Tamsin 3 feet to my left and 2 junior colleagues 4 feet behind me and the glass front wall at my back through which the street was entirely visible to anyone who happened to look in. There was nowhere to go that was not watched. I walked to the HR corridor. Gerald Okafor opened his door before I knocked, the way someone opens a door when the morning has been arranged around a sequence. He handed me a second document, Helix Solutions letterhead, formal workplace complaint received from an external party, investigation opened as of that morning. Evidence cited, the photo booth strip, submitted by a named third party. A message thread screenshot, provided by an accidental recipient who had received it voluntarily. Keycard entry records for 4 specific Thursday evenings, showing extended building presence from both named parties. Derek Solano. Administrative leave. Effective today. The photo booth strip I kept as a souvenir. The screenshot I sent to Kezia from an unsteady hand. The keycard logs from a building I passed through every single day and never once considered. I said this was retaliation. I said Marcus was using the company to punish me for a personal dispute. Gerald Okafor wrote this on his notepad and said it was noted, and the investigation would consider all submitted evidence alongside any written response I chose to provide. He did not argue, did not engage with my framing, did not offer an expression I could read as sympathy or condemnation. He noted it and closed the door. and the door closing was the most complete thing that had happened to me in 2 months. Tamsin was at her desk when I came back through. I said she told him. She said he asked one question in the parking garage, and she answered it honestly, and she said it the way a person says something they have been ready to say for a long time and have no reason left to hold back. Then she turned to her screen. What I believed gave me power. The laugh in the banquet hall, the ease in the service corridor, the way the room responded when I gave it a performance, the sensation of being the person other people orbit. What I did not understand was that the people watching most carefully, Tamsin with her coffee cup, Kezia with her thumbs up, Priya with her saved screenshot, Lily with her borrowed vocabulary about faces, Caro at the school gate with a half-second too slow, were not the audience. They were the record, and he was the one who had been writing it down since the first night I came home, smelling of someone else's Malbec. I thought confidence was armor. It was evidence. 3 weeks later, Marcus answered my call on the second ring. I said the investigation had affected my professional standing, and I believed we could have resolved everything privately, between ourselves, without the company involved. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "I gave you that conversation every time you refused it." He said all further communication should go through the mediation contact he had emailed that week. Then he said goodbye, fully, not abruptly, the way a person says goodbye to something they finished grieving before the conversation began, and ended the call. I sat with the phone and did not move for a long time. Closure snapshot. Marcus collects Lily on Mondays and Thursdays. I collect her Tuesdays and Wednesdays, with alternating weekends. The laminated schedule on my fridge shows the week in 2 colours running in parallel that never cross. Lily calls this place Mummy's flat, and the family home Daddy's house, without editorial and without being asked to choose. Derek did not reply to my message. Kezia responds at roughly half her previous frequency and has stopped offering opinions on anything I tell her. Petra passes me in the office kitchen with a neutral good morning and no warmth, which is not cruelty but is the specific, accurate temperature of someone who is recalibrated. In February, I took a bus past the Helix Solutions building and looked up at the rooftop terrace from the street. The space heater was off. The chairs were folded against the railing. The city was the same amber it always was at that hour, completely indifferent, unchanged by anything that happened beneath it. I watched until the bus moved. I had thought confidence was armor. He wrote things down.